The citadel of Valanthos had never witnessed such a gathering of wolves. Serena pressed her spine against the cold marble of the western gallery, her pulse hammering so violently she feared the wolves below might hear it. Thousands of torches blazed in their iron sconces, throwing restless shadows across the faces of pack leaders, high-born ladies, and common folk who had journeyed from the farthest reaches of the realm. The binding rite. Every Alpha King in 300 years had chosen his queen through the ceremony. Every wolf of standing had come to witness which bloodline would rise to stand beside the throne. Serena should not have been there. She was nothing. A scribe who shelved books in the royal archives. A woman of no family, no lineage, no name that any noble would recognize. And yet, her fingers drifted to her inner wrist, where a leather bracelet concealed the mark beneath. The scar tissue shaped like a crescent moon, ringed by the impression of teeth. A claiming bite, given in secret 4 months ago in the abandoned watchtower where Kale had first kissed her. When the council has been appeased, he had whispered that night, his lips brushing the fresh wound. I will declare you before the entire realm. You are my mate, Serena. My wolf recognized you the moment I saw you in that dusty archive, covered in ink stains and arguing with the head librarian. She had laughed then, delirious with joy. A scribe queen. The nobles will riot. Let them. His amber eyes had burned with intense certainty. I would burn every alliance, every treaty, every political arrangement my father ever made before I would give you up. The bond has spoken. You are mine. She had believed every word. Now her other hand crept to her belly, where a new secret grew. 8 weeks along, the palace healer had confirmed just yesterday. She had planned to tell him tonight, after this ceremony concluded, after he had satisfied his council's demands to at least appear as though he considered the noble candidates. It was theater, he had assured her, nothing more. The candidates will approach the dais, announced the high priestess, her aged voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. Serena's nails carved half-moons into her palms as she watched 4 women ascend the obsidian steps, daughters of the great houses, each one draped in ceremonial white silk, each one trained from birth to become a king's consort. And at their head, with hair like burnished copper and eyes the color of a winter storm, walked Valaria of House Raventhorn. The crowd stirred with approval. The Raventhorns controlled the eastern mountain passes. They commanded 5,000 warriors and held debts over half the minor houses in Valanthos. For years, they had positioned their eldest daughter for this exact moment. Serena searched for Kale's face on the dais. He stood with his back straight, his broad shoulders rigid beneath the ceremonial black leather. Even from this distance she knew every plane of that face, the sharp jaw, the dark hair that fell across his brow, the mouth that had whispered her name like a prayer. She waited for him to look up, to find her in the shadows as he always did, as if some invisible thread connected them across any distance. He did not look. Kale, Alpha King of Valanthos, blood of the first wolves, voice of the packs. The high priestess intoned. You have heard your counsel. You have considered the treaties and alliances. The realm holds its breath for your choice. Silence fell like a killing frost. Serena could not breathe. Her mark throbbed beneath the leather bracelet, a rhythmic pulse that matched her heartbeat. Surely he felt it too. Surely he would turn, would find her, would tell these assembled wolves that his choice had been made months ago in secret moonlit meetings and whispered vows. Kale stepped forward. Something was wrong. Serena saw it immediately. His gait was strange, his movements stiff and mechanical, like a puppet guided by strings. The fluid grace she knew so intimately had vanished, replaced by something hollow. And his eyes. Those amber eyes that burned with passion when he looked at her were flat, distant, empty as a winter sky. I choose, his voice rang out, toneless as a funeral bell. Valaria of House Raventhorn. The citadel erupted. Cheers and howls shook the age-worn stones. Lords embraced. Ladies wept with joy. Warriors stamped their feet in thunderous approval. The Raventhorns had won. The alliance that would dominate Valanthos for generations had been sealed. And Serena felt something inside her die. The mark on her wrist ignited with sudden, searing agony. She gasped, doubling over in the shadows, her hand clamping over the bracelet as pain radiated up her arm and into her chest. It burned as though his teeth were being ripped from her flesh, as though the bond itself was being torn apart. Through vision blurred by tears, she watched Kale take Valaria's hand. Watched him raise it to his lips in the traditional gesture of acceptance. Watched the woman smile with triumph, while the man Serena loved showed no expression at all. He did not search the gallery. He did not hesitate. He did not seem to know she existed. A sound escaped her throat. Something between a sob and a scream, swallowed by the cacophony of celebration. She stumbled backward, longing to escape before the grief crushed her entirely. Her shoulder struck a pillar. Her hip collided with a stone bench. But she kept moving, kept running, kept fleeing from the moment her world broke apart into 1,000 pieces. The servants' passages were deserted, everyone having gone to witness history. Serena ran through them blindly, one hand clutching her burning wrist, the other wrapped protectively around her stomach. The child, his child, growing inside her while he bound himself to another. She would not stay to watch him wed Valaria, would not remain in this citadel where she had given him her heart, her body, her soul. Where she had been fool enough to believe that a nameless scribe could hold the love of a king. Her small chamber in the archives wing took only minutes to pack. A change of clothes, her mother's ring, the only inheritance she possessed. The journal where she had foolishly written poems about his eyes. She paused at the narrow window, looking out at the celebration fires being lit across the capital. Somewhere in that citadel, Kale was accepting congratulations for his wise choice. Valaria was probably already planning their wedding feast. And no one knew. Not a single soul suspected that the Alpha King's true mate was disappearing into the night with his heir growing in her womb. Serena pressed her fingertips to the cold glass. "Goodbye, my love," she whispered. "May you find whatever happiness you chose instead of me." Then she pulled her worn cloak around her shoulders and slipped through the kitchen door into the courtyard. The royal stables were nearly empty, most of the grooms at the celebration. She found a plain brown mare in the back stalls, a horse meant for messengers rather than nobility. No one would miss it until morning. Her hands shook as she saddled the animal. Her wrist still burned beneath the bracelet, a constant reminder of everything she was leaving behind. But she forced herself to move, to focus, to breathe through the pain that threatened to split her chest open. She was almost to the outer gate when the howl split the sky. The sound froze her blood. It was not a howl of celebration or triumph. It was anguish, raw and broken and terrible, a sound that spoke of loss so profound it could shatter mountains. But Serena did not look back. She could not afford to. If she turned, if she hesitated, she might never leave. Might return to beg for scraps of attention from a man who had publicly discarded her. She kicked the mare into a gallop and vanished into the winter darkness. Behind her, in the citadel of Valanthos, she did not see the shadow that burst onto the balcony overlooking the courtyard. She did not see the amber eyes that flickered with sudden, urgent clarity, tracking the rider who disappeared through the gates. She did not hear the second howl, longer and more devastating than the first, a sound that made every wolf in the capital lift their heads in shared grief. And she did not know that by the time Kale reached her empty chamber, his hands shaking as he touched the cold sheets where her scent still lingered, Serena was already 3 leagues away. When dawn broke over the mountains, she was gone. And the Alpha King stood alone in the archives, holding a leather journal filled with love poems, reading words that fractured what remained of his heart. 4 months later, the village of Willowfen had almost forgotten it had a newcomer. Serena had arrived in the dead of winter, a young widow seeking refuge from tragedy. That was the story she told, and the village elders had no reason to question it. Her belly was swollen with grief's legacy, they assumed, and her haunted eyes spoke of losses too painful to name. They offered her the abandoned cottage at the edge of the marshland in exchange for her knowledge of herbs and childbirth. She accepted without bargaining. Now spring struggled to break through the lingering cold, and Serena had become simply Bryn the midwife. She delivered babies. She brewed remedies for fevers and coughs. She sat with the dying and eased their passage with gentle words and numbing teas. And every night, she lay awake with her hands on her growing belly, feeling the child move against her palms. The movements had grown strange over the past weeks. Sometimes she felt kicks from opposite sides simultaneously, as though two small bodies were fighting for space. The village's elder midwife had examined her with knowing eyes. Twins, the old woman had pronounced, blessing or burden, depending on your luck. Twins. Of course, as if fate had not twisted the knife deep enough. Your father would have been proud, Serena whispered in the darkness, then caught herself. She could not think of him. Every memory was a wound that refused to heal. Yet the mark on her wrist would not let her forget. It should have faded by now. Among wolfkind, rejection severed the bond completely. The claiming bite was meant to dissolve within weeks, leaving only smooth skin and bitter memories. Instead, Serena's mark had darkened. The scar tissue had deepened from pink to silver to something that almost seemed to glow in certain light. And the burning had never stopped. A constant low heat that flared whenever the wind blew from the west, from the direction of Valanthos. Sometimes, late at night, she could swear she felt something through it. A presence, a searching, a wild clawing need that reached across the leagues between them. But that was impossible. Kale had chosen another. The bond should have dissolved the moment he made that choice. Unless the bond had never been his choice to break. Serena shoved the thought away. False hope was a poison, and she had drunk enough poison to last a lifetime. Mistress Bryn? The voice at her door belonged to young Pella, the tanner's daughter. Serena set down the herbs she had been grinding and wiped her hands on her apron. What is it, child? Pella's face was flushed with a mixture of excitement and fear. Traders have come from the west, from the capital. They bring news. Serena's heart seized. What news? The Alpha King. Pella's eyes were wide. They say he has gone mad. The world tilted. Serena gripped the doorframe to keep herself upright. Mad? She managed. Pella nodded vigorously. The traders say he has torn every pack apart searching for someone, a woman. No one knows who she is or what she has done, only that the king will destroy anyone who stands between him and finding her. Serena's hand moved to her belly. One of the twins kicked sharply, as if responding to the mention of its father. They say the crops are failing in the southern provinces. Pella continued breathlessly. Wolves have gone feral, attacking travelers on the main roads. The king's own hunters have been sent to villages as far as the northern ice, questioning everyone, searching every home. Searching for what? Serena whispered. For her. Whoever she is. Pella leaned closer, her voice dropping. The traders say the king has offered 20,000 gold pieces for any information. 20,000. Can you imagine? And there is something else. Serena waited, her pulse thundering in her ears. They say the chosen bride, Valaria Raventhorn, has never shared the king's chambers. Not once since the binding rite. Some say the king cannot even stand to be in the same room as her. Some say... Pella hesitated. Some say the binding rite was cursed. That dark magic was used to steal the king's will. The mark on Serena's wrist flared with sudden heat. "The affairs of kings are not our concern," she heard herself say, her voice surprisingly steady. "Thank your father for the news." But after Pella had gone, Serena sank into her chair with unsteady legs. He was searching for her. Why would Kale tear his kingdom apart for a woman he had publicly rejected? Why would he destroy everything he had built for a lover he had cast aside without a second glance? Unless something had been wrong that night. Unless the emptiness in his eyes had been something other than indifference. Unless he had never truly chosen at all. Movement at the tree line caught her attention. Serena's breath stopped. A shape stood between the old willows. Large, four-legged, fur the color of storm clouds in the failing light. A wolf. As she watched, frozen with terror, another emerged beside it. Then another. Then 3 more. 6 hulking wolves, their amber eyes fixed on her cottage with an intelligence that was anything but animal. They had found her. The mark on her wrist exploded with heat so intense she cried out. This was nothing like the dull burn she had grown accustomed to. This was fire, liquid and consuming, radiating through her veins until her entire body quivered with the force of it. And beneath the pain, she felt something else. A presence, vast and frantic, pushing against the edges of her mind. Her babies kicked violently, movements coming from multiple directions at once, as though they too sensed what was coming. "No," Serena breathed, both hands flying to her belly. "No. No, no." He was close, not just his wolves. Him. She stumbled to her feet, eyes darting around the small cottage. The back door led to the marshes, but if his wolves were already watching, they would run her down before she made it 50 yards. The root cellar was hidden, but a wolf's nose would find her within minutes. She was trapped. The front door shuddered beneath a heavy knock. Serena's heart stopped. The wolves she had seen were in their animal forms. They could not knock on doors, which meant someone in human form stood on her threshold. Another knock, more insistent. "Mistress Bryn?" A male voice, unfamiliar. "Please open the door. We mean you no harm." Serena laughed bitterly at that. Wolves who had hunted a pregnant woman across 4 months and countless leagues meant her no harm. How reassuring. But she had no choice. Running was impossible. Hiding was futile. And if she did not open the door willingly, they would simply tear it from its hinges. She grabbed the iron fire poker from beside her hearth and moved toward the door. When she opened it, 3 men stood on her threshold. 2 were clearly warriors, their imposing frames and alert postures marking them as the Alpha King's elite guard. But it was the 3rd man who drew Serena's attention. He was perhaps 50, his dark hair shot through with silver, his weathered face bearing the scars of countless battles, and his eyes, a deep amber that seemed to see straight through her deception, held something that looked almost like relief. "My lady," he said, and the title made Serena flinch. "I am Rorik, first beta to the Alpha King. We have been searching for you for a very long time." "You have made a mistake." Serena forced her voice to remain steady. "My name is Bryn. I am a simple midwife." Rorik's expression shifted to something like sympathy. "You are Serena, daughter of no house, formerly a scribe in the royal archives. You bear the king's claiming mark on your left wrist and his children in your womb." The poker wavered in Serena's grip. "How do you know about the mark?" "Because the king has described it to every wolf in the realm, because he has not slept more than an hour at a time in 4 months. Because he is destroying his own kingdom to find the mate who vanished without explanation." Rorik paused. "May we come in?" Serena wanted to refuse, but her legs were shaking, her mark was burning, and one of the babies had finally stilled, as if listening. She stepped aside. Rorik entered alone, leaving the guards at the door. His eyes swept across her modest cottage, taking in the drying herbs, the simple furniture, the narrow bed where she had spent countless nights crying into her pillow. He did not choose her, Rorik said quietly. Valeria, I mean. He did not choose her willingly. Serena's knees nearly buckled. What? The night of the binding rite, someone slipped a compound into the king's wine. Not simple wolfsbane, something far more insidious. A blood curse, we believe, mixed with herbs that severed his connection to his wolf, his instincts, his bond. That is impossible, Serena whispered. We thought so too, until the effects began to fracture 3 days later and the king woke screaming your name. Rorik's voice hardened. He remembered nothing of the ceremony, nothing of choosing Valaria. The first thing he did was run to the archives to find you, and when your chamber was empty. He did not need to finish. Serena sank into the nearest chair, her mind reeling. A blood curse. He had been cursed. The empty eyes, the mechanical movements, the complete absence of recognition. It had not been rejection at all. It had been violation. Who did this? She demanded. House Raventhorn. We have proof now, though it took months to gather. Valaria's family has wanted their bloodline on the throne for generations. With you gone and the king bound to their daughter by witnessed oath, they would have everything they desired. Rorik knelt before her chair. My lady, the king is not well. The broken bond, the missing mate. His wolf has been fighting for dominance since the moment he began to regain his senses. If he does not find you soon, we fear he may be lost to the beast entirely. Serena knew what that meant. A wolf separated from its true mate for too long could lose itself to the animal, never to return. And an alpha, with power as vast as Kale's, would become something catastrophic. I cannot go back, she heard herself say. Valaria, the Raventhorns, they will kill me. They will kill my children. Which is why I have not told the king exactly where you are. Rorik withdrew a folded letter from inside his coat. This was intercepted 2 weeks ago. Serena took the paper with numb fingers. The seal was broken, but she could see the Raventhorn crest pressed into the dark crimson wax. The message inside was brief. The pretender has been located in the eastern marshlands. The problem will be eliminated before the next moon rises. Long live Queen Valaria. Serena's blood turned to ice. Assassins, she breathed. Rorik nodded grimly. We intercepted this by chance. We do not know how many have been sent or how close they are. He glanced toward the window. My lady, Kale will find you with or without my guidance. The bond is pulling him east. Every day, every hour, he gets closer. But the assassins may reach you first. As if to emphasize his words, Serena's mark flared with renewed heat. He feels that too, the beta said quietly. Every time your mark burns, he feels an answering fire. It is the only thing keeping him tethered to his human mind. Before Rorik could say more, a howl split the evening air. Long and mournful, it came from the marshes, close and filled with warning. The beta was on his feet instantly. They have found us. Who? Serena demanded, rising despite her quivering legs. Through her window she could see shapes moving between the willows. Not the gray wolves who had watched her cottage earlier. These were different. Darker. Their movements coordinated with predatory precision, and leading them, stepping from the shadows with a blade that gleamed with oily darkness, was a figure in black leather whose face was hidden behind a mask shaped like a snarling wolf. The Raventhorn assassins had arrived. The first arrow shattered Serena's window before she could draw breath to scream. Rorik moved with supernatural speed, shoving her toward the back of the cottage as glass exploded across the floor. The 2 guards burst through the front door, already shifting mid-stride, their human forms dissolving into enormous wolves that lunged toward the tree line. The cellar, Rorik commanded. Now! There is no way out from the cellar, Serena gasped. You only need to survive until reinforcements arrive. Another arrow punched through the wooden wall, embedding itself an inch from Serena's shoulder. She could see the dark liquid glistening on its tip. Poison. They are not trying to capture me, she realized aloud. They want me dead quickly. Rorik's jaw tightened. The Raventhorns cannot afford witnesses. He pulled a long knife from his belt and pressed it into her hands. The blade is silver-edged. It will wound even a shifted wolf. Use it if you must. Before Serena could respond, a howl of pain erupted from outside. One of the guards, then another, then silence. Rorik's eyes flickered amber, his wolf rising to the surface. Stay hidden. Whatever happens, do not come out until you hear my voice or the king's. Rorik, wait! But he was already gone, his body exploding into wolf form as he crashed through the ruined window to join the battle. Serena stood frozen in her destroyed cottage, the silver knife clutched in her shaking hands. Through the shattered glass, she could see shapes moving in the darkness. Wolves clashing with wolves, the flash of blades, the sickening sound of bodies hitting the frozen ground. Her mark burned with renewed intensity, and she gasped at the sensation that accompanied it. He was closer now. Much closer. The bond between them pulsed with urgent need, and for the first time, Serena understood that she could feel his emotions bleeding through the connection. Rage so vast it threatened to consume everything. Fear, sharp and unfamiliar. And beneath it all, a longing so profound it made her eyes sting with tears. Through the window, she watched in horror as Rorik's wolf form was thrown against a weathered willow with bone-cracking force. He struggled to rise, blood matting his silver-streaked fur, but 4 dark wolves circled him with predatory patience. He was losing. Serena's gaze dropped to the cellar door. She could hide as Rorik had instructed, could wait in the darkness and pray that help arrived before the assassins found her. But Rorik would be dead by then. The guards were already silent, and she would be cowering underground while wolves died to protect her. No. She had spent 4 months running, 4 months hiding, 4 months letting fear dictate her every choice. Not anymore. Serena had kept her gift secret her entire life. The ability to see through the veil, to glimpse the threads of life that connected all living things. Among common folk, such power would mark her as unnatural, as something to be destroyed. But she was already marked for death. What did she have left to lose? She closed her eyes and reached for the power she had always suppressed. It answered like a river breaking through a dam. Silver light bloomed from her hands, her arms, her entire body. Not the warm gold of healing magic, but something older, stranger. The light of the moon itself, the power that had slumbered in her bloodline for generations, awakened at last by need and the lives growing within her. Serena stepped through the shattered window into the chaos of battle. The effect was immediate. Every wolf in the clearing turned to stare at the pregnant woman who glowed like a fallen star. The assassin wolves hesitated, their formation breaking as instinct warred with training. Serena walked toward Rorik's fallen form, her bare feet leaving prints of silver light in the blood-soaked mud. "You will not have him," she said, and her voice carried harmonics that were not entirely human. "You will not have any of them." She knelt beside Rorik and pressed her glowing hands to his wounds. The beta gasped as energy poured into his broken body, knitting bone and closing gashes with impossible speed. One of the assassin wolves lunged toward her with jaws wide. The silver light around her flared like a second moon. The wolf was thrown backward with a yelp of agony, its dark fur smoking where the light had touched it. It scrambled to its feet and fled into the marshes, followed by 2 of its packmates. But not all of them ran. The masked figure stepped into the clearing, blade raised. Unlike the wolves, this assassin was fully human, apparently unaffected by the magic that had scattered the others. "Impressive," a male voice said from behind the snarling mask. "The Raventhorns will be very interested to learn that the king's whore is a moon-touched witch." Serena's power flickered, The healing she had poured into Rorik had cost her more than she realized, and her reserves were dangerously depleted. The twins stirred uneasily, as though sensing their mother's exhaustion. The assassin's blade rose for the killing stroke. And then, the world exploded. Trees splintered like kindling as something immense crashed through the willows. The ground shook with the force of its approach. The remaining assassin wolves scattered in pure primal terror. The masked man spun toward the sound, his blade swinging to track the new threat. He was not fast enough. A wolf the size of a warhorse burst from the tree line. Its fur was black as a moonless night, its eyes bright with golden fire that seemed to illuminate the entire clearing. It moved with a speed that defied comprehension, crossing the distance between the trees and its prey in a single, devastating bound. Its jaws closed around the assassin's blade arm with a sickening crunch. The man's scream was cut short as the towering wolf shook him like a rag doll, then flung his broken body into the darkness. It turned in a circle, searching for more threats, finding none. Then those burning golden eyes fixed on Serena. She could not move, could not breathe, could only stare at the creature that radiated power like heat from a bonfire. The wolf approached her slowly, each step deliberate, controlled. Blood dripped from its muzzle, its body blocked out the stars. And yet, when it finally stood before her, it lowered its great head and pressed its nose gently to her belly. Both twins kicked at once as if recognizing their father's presence. The wolf made a sound that was almost a whimper. "Kale," Serena whispered. The shift happened in the space between heartbeats. One moment, a wolf stood before her. The next, a man knelt in the blood-soaked mud, his hands hovering over her stomach as if he was afraid to touch her. He looked up, and Serena saw that the Alpha King was weeping. Serena had imagined this moment 1,000 times during her months of exile. She had imagined cold indifference, imagined him dragging her back to Valanthos in chains to face punishment for her disappearance, imagined rage, accusations, demands for explanations she could not give. She had never imagined him on his knees before her, tears carving tracks down his face, his entire body shaking with barely contained emotion. "You are alive," Kyle breathed. His voice was raw, wrecked, as if he had been screaming for months. "You are alive, and you are—" His eyes dropped to her swollen belly. His hand reached toward her belly, then stopped, hovering just above. "May I?" he asked. The question broke something in Serena's chest. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 5 kingdoms, was asking permission to feel his own children move. She guided his hand to rest where the twins stirred. They kicked immediately, movements coming from 2 different places. Kale's eyes widened at the sensation, his palm pressing gently to feel more. "Children," he whispered. "Our children. Serena, why did you not tell me?" The question dissolved the spell. Serena stepped backward, breaking the connection. The warmth of the moment gave way to the cold reality of everything that had happened. "Tell you?" Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "When exactly should I have done that, Kale? Before or after you chose Valaria in front of the entire realm?" Kale flinched as if she had struck him. "I did not choose her. I would never. I saw you." The words tore from her throat like broken glass. "I was there. I watched you take her hand. I watched you stand before our people and declare that she would be your queen, while I hid in the shadows like some shameful secret." "Serena, please." Kyle rose to his feet, his hands reaching for her. "I was cursed. Rorik told you. The Raventhorns poisoned me with blood magic. I remember nothing of that night except waking 3 days later and finding you gone." "How convenient," Serena spat, even as her heart cracked at the agony in his eyes. "Convenient?" Kale's voice hardened with something close to fury. "You think any part of this has been convenient? I have spent 4 months hunting for you. 4 months fighting my wolf for control. 4 months watching my kingdom crumble while I tore apart every pack, every village, every corner of the realm searching for the mate who vanished without a word. Because you rejected me. Because I was violated. The roar shook the clearing. Birds fled from the nearby trees. The word hung between them, terrible and true. Do you think I chose this? Do you think I wanted to wake up bound by oath to a woman I despise, while the woman I love was gone? While our bond was screaming in my chest and I had no idea where you were, or if you were even alive? His voice cracked on the last word, and Serena saw something in his eyes that she had never expected to see. Vulnerability. Raw, aching vulnerability from the most powerful wolf in 5 kingdoms. Her anger faltered. The bond. She had felt it too. Every day of her exile. The burning mark that should have faded but never did. The ache that followed her into sleep and greeted her upon waking. The sense of him searching, always searching, like a lighthouse she could never quite reach. I thought you had thrown me away, she whispered. I thought everything you said was a lie, that I was just a convenient distraction until you were forced to choose someone worthy of your crown. Kale closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up until she had no choice but to meet his gaze. You are worthy of everything, he said with sharp intensity. You are my mate, my true mate. The bond recognized you before I even knew your name. Do you think I would give that up for politics? For power? For anything in this world or any other? A sob escaped Serena's throat. She had held the grief inside for so long, had built walls around her broken heart to keep functioning. But now, with his hands on her face and his words cracking through her defenses, those walls were crumbling. I waited for you, she choked out. That night. I waited in my chamber for you to come to me. I was going to tell you about the babies. I had practiced the words 100 times. Kale's expression crumbled. Serena. And when you did not come, I went to find you. Instead, I found you choosing her, kissing her hand, looking at her like she was your future while I stood in the shadows with your children growing inside me. She pounded her fist against his chest, but there was no strength behind the blow. Do you know what that felt like? Do you have any idea? Kale caught her wrist and pressed her palm flat against his heart. Yes, he said quietly. I know exactly what it felt like, because I have spent every moment since that night living with the knowledge that I failed you, that something was done to me that made me betray the most important person in my existence. His heartbeat thundered beneath her hand, strong and steady and achingly familiar. I have not touched Valaria, Kale continued. I have not spoken to her willingly since I regained my senses. The council threatens rebellion every day. Half the noble houses have withdrawn their support. He laughed bitterly. They think I have gone mad, Serena, and perhaps I have, but I would burn this kingdom to ashes before I let anyone but you sit beside me on that throne. The mark on her wrist flared with heat, and she felt his answering pulse through the bond. His claim on her, incomplete as it was, resonated with something deep in her soul. The Raventhorns sent assassins, she heard herself say. They want me dead. Kale's eyes hardened to molten gold. Then the Raventhorns will learn what happens to those who threaten my mate. A rustle from the marshes interrupted them. Rorik limped forward, his body still bearing the marks of battle despite Serena's healing. My king, the beta said carefully. The assassin you destroyed was Marius Raventhorn, Valaria's younger brother. The name hung in the air like poison. Then there is no more pretense, Kale said grimly. The Raventhorns have openly attempted to murder the true queen of Valanthos. This is war. His hand moved to her belly again, cradling the curve where his children grew. They tried to take everything from me, my mate, my heirs, my very will. I will not allow them to threaten our family ever again. A howl rose from the forest, long and mournful. More followed, dozens of voices joining in a chorus that seemed to shake the very earth. "The king's wolves have arrived," Rorik said. "All of them." Serena looked past Kale to see shapes emerging from the darkness. Wolves of every size and color, filling the clearing, their eyes gleaming with bold loyalty. "We ride to Valanthos tonight," Kale announced. "Serena comes with us. The Raventhorns answer for their crimes before dawn." Serena wanted to protest, wanted to argue that she was in no condition to travel, that the babies needed rest, that she could not possibly face the people who had seen her humiliated at the binding rite. But when Kale looked at her, his golden eyes soft with tenderness beneath the fury, she found she could not refuse him anything. "Together?" she asked quietly. Kale pressed his forehead to hers. "Always, my heart. From this moment until my last breath. Together." The journey to Valanthos should have taken 2 days. Kale's wolves made it in half of one. Serena rode before the Alpha King on his black warhorse, his arm wrapped securely around her waist, his body shielding her from the biting wind. She had protested at first, concerned about propriety, about appearances. Kale had simply lifted her onto the saddle and silenced her objections with a look that brooked no argument. "My wolf needs you close," he had said, his voice rough with emotion. "4 months of separation nearly destroyed us both. I will not let you out of my sight until the bond is completed and every threat to your safety is eliminated." So Serena had relented, leaning back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat against her spine. The twins seemed to approve of the arrangement, settling into peaceful stillness for the first time in weeks. As they rode through the night, Kale told her everything. He told her about waking from the curse's grip to find Valaria in his chambers, attempting to consummate a union he had no memory of agreeing to. About the horror that had flooded through him when he realized what had been done. About throwing Valaria from his rooms and ordering her confined to her family's quarters pending investigation. He told her about the search that had consumed his every waking moment. The wolves sent to every corner of the kingdom. The sleepless nights spent poring over reports and maps. The way his control had frayed with each passing day until his own advisors feared to approach him. "My wolf knew you were alive," he murmured against her hair. "The bond never fully broke. Every time I tried to accept that you might be gone forever, I would feel a pulse of warmth. And I knew you were out there somewhere, waiting for me to find you." Serena's hand moved to cover his where it rested on her belly. "I felt it too," she admitted. "The burn that never faded. The dreams that felt more real than waking." Kale stiffened behind her. "You dreamed of me?" "Every night. You came to my chamber. You spoke to me in words I could somehow understand. You told me you loved me, that you would find me, that nothing would keep us apart." "Those were not dreams." Kale's voice was hoarse. "My wolf, when I slept, he would reach for you through the bond. I thought I was only imagining it, but you actually felt." He trailed off, overcome. Serena turned in the saddle to look at him. In the silver moonlight, she could see the shadows under his eyes, the gauntness of his cheeks, the evidence of months of suffering etched into every line of his face. "We have both been through so much," she whispered. "Apart when we should have been together." Kale's hand came up to cup her face. "Never again," he vowed. "Whatever comes next, we face it as one." He leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tender and questioning. But when Serena's hand curled around the back of his neck, pulling him closer, something ignited between them. The bond roared to life. Serena gasped against his mouth as sensation flooded through her. His emotions crashed into hers with staggering force. Love, consuming and absolute. Desire, barely held in check. And beneath it all, a protective instinct that wrapped around her like armor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kale's eyes were bright with golden fire. "Soon," he promised, his voice rough with restrained need. "When you are safe, when our enemies are destroyed, I will complete the bond properly, and you will never doubt my devotion again." They reached the outskirts of Valanthos as dawn painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold. The capital spread before them, its spires reaching toward the heavens. But something was terribly wrong. Smoke rose from several quarters of the city. The distant sound of shouting reached their ears. And on the great banner that flew above the citadel gates, the royal crest had been replaced by the crimson serpent of House Raventhorn. "No," Rorik breathed from his horse beside them. "They would not dare." Kale's arm tightened around Serena as a growl built in his chest. "They have taken the citadel." "How is that possible?" Serena demanded. "You have been gone barely half a day." "The Raventhorns have been planning this for years, perhaps decades. They did not just want me to bind myself to Valaria, they wanted to replace me entirely." A rider emerged from the city gates, galloping toward them at reckless speed. One of Kale's scouts, her face ashen with terror. "My king," she gasped. "Lord Raventhorn struck at midnight. He had allies among the guard, men his gold had already purchased. He has declared himself regent, claiming you have gone feral and must be put down for the safety of the realm. Valaria has been named queen." A snarl tore from Kale's throat that made even Serena flinch. "There is more," the scout continued. "They have taken hostages, the servants who remained loyal to you, the guards who refused to bend the knee. They are to be executed at midday as traitors to the true crown. All 43 of them." Serena felt the blood drain from her face. "Including the old archivist who served in the royal library," the scout added. "The one who helped the Lady Serena during her time at court." Hestia. The name struck Serena like a physical blow. Hestia, who had taught her to read the texts of old, who had brought her honeyed tea when she worked late into the night, who had suspected the truth about her relationship with Kale and never breathed a word. "We have to save them," Serena said resolutely. Kale looked down at her. "Serena, you cannot enter that city. If the Raventhorns capture you, if we do nothing, 43 innocent people die. I will not have their blood on my hands, Kale. I will not let Hestia die because she was kind to me." For a long moment, the Alpha King was silent. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. Something powerful, something proud. "My queen," he murmured. "Even now you think of others before yourself?" He turned to address the army of wolves assembled behind them. "The Raventhorns believe they have won. They believe their treachery has succeeded, that their false queen sits secure upon a stolen throne." His eyes glowed with golden fire. "They are wrong." A howl rose from the assembled wolves, hundreds of voices joining in a chorus of fury and absolute loyalty. "Today, we take back what is ours. Today, we show the traitors what happens to those who threaten our king, our true queen, and the heirs she carries." The army surged forward, a tide of fur and fang and righteous fury. And at its head, with his mate held close against his heart, the Alpha King rode to reclaim his throne. The battle for Valanthos was brutal and swift. The Raventhorns had expected resistance. They had prepared for a siege, for negotiations, for the political maneuvering that typically preceded such conflicts. They had not expected an army of wolves driven by 4 months of rage and the primal imperative to protect their king's mate and unborn heirs. Serena watched from a protected position on the hillside as Kale led the charge. Even from this distance she could feel his fury through the bond, a blazing inferno that scorched through her veins. His wolf form was terrible to behold, a shadow of death that tore through the Raventhorn defenders like parchment. Within an hour, the outer walls had fallen. Within 2, the citadel gates lay in ruins. But as the sun climbed toward its noon peak, a messenger came running with news that turned Serena's blood to ice. "My lady, Lord Raventhorn has barricaded himself in the Great Hall with the hostages. He says if the king does not surrender himself, he will begin executing them one by one, starting with the old archivist. Serena was moving before she consciously decided to, ignoring the protests of the guards Kale had left to protect her. Her body ached from the journey, her back screaming with the strain of carrying the twins, but none of that mattered. She had to reach the Great Hall. The citadel corridors were chaos. Bodies of fallen wolves littered the marble floors. The scent of blood hung thick in the air. But Serena pushed through it all, following the pull of the bond toward where she knew Kale would be. She found him at the doors of the Great Hall, held back by Rorik and 4 other wolves. "You cannot go in there," Rorik was saying. "It is exactly what Raventhorn wants. He will use you as a hostage, force concessions." "If I do nothing, innocent people die," Kale replied, his voice ragged with frustration. Serena pushed through the guards. "Kale." He spun at the sound of her voice. "Serena, what are you doing here? I told you to stay." "I know what you told me." She stopped before him, tilting her chin up defiantly. "And I am telling you that I will not hide while others die in my place. This is not your fight." "It became my fight the moment the Raventhorns decided I was an obstacle to their ambitions." Serena placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her palm. "And it became my fight the moment I fell in love with you." Kyle's breath caught. In all their months together, through all their whispered conversations and stolen moments, neither of them had ever spoken those words aloud. "Serena," he whispered. "I love you," she repeated, stronger now. "I loved you when I thought you had betrayed me. I loved you through 4 months of exile and heartbreak, and I will not let that love make me a coward now." She turned toward the great hall doors before he could respond. "Lord Raventhorn," she called out, her voice ringing through the time-worn stone. "I am Serena, the woman your family has tried so hard to destroy. I am coming in. Alone." "Serena, no." Kale grabbed her arm. She looked back at him. "Trust me, please." Something passed between them through the bond. Not words, but understanding. Faith. And beneath it all, a prayer that this would not be the last time they looked upon each other. Kale released her arm. Serena pushed open the doors and stepped into the great hall. The scene inside was worse than she had imagined. 43 hostages knelt in a line before the raised dais, their hands bound, their faces pale with terror. Armed Raventhorn soldiers stood behind them with blades drawn, positioned for efficient slaughter. And on the throne that should have belonged to Kale sat Lord Aldrich Raventhorn, his silver hair gleaming in the torchlight, his cold eyes fixed on her with predatory interest. Beside him stood Valeria. "So this is the creature that has caused so much trouble," Valeria said, her lip curling with contempt. "A scribe with ink-stained fingers and a swollen belly. How pathetic that my brother died for this." Serena ignored her, her gaze finding Hestia among the hostages. The old archivist's eyes were wide with fear, but also with something else. Hope. "Run, child," Hestia whispered. "Run while you still can." "I am done running." Serena turned to face Lord Raventhorn. "You want the king to surrender. I am offering you something better." Raventhorn's eyebrow rose with aristocratic disdain. "And what might that be?" "Me." Serena placed her hand on her belly. "The king's mate and his unborn heirs. Take me as your hostage instead. Release the others." "No." The roar came from beyond the doors. Kale's anguish tore through the bond like jagged glass, cutting her from the inside. But Raventhorn was smiling, a cold expression that did not reach his eyes. An interesting proposition. The mother of the royal line in exchange for a few servants and guards. He stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Very well, I accept." "Father, wait." Valeria interjected sharply. "We should simply kill her now and be done with it." "Patience, daughter. A dead hostage has no value, a living one, especially one carrying the royal heirs. Raventhorn's smile widened. Guards, release the prisoners. Secure the girl. The hostages were cut free, stumbling toward the doors in confused relief. Hestia tried to reach Serena, but soldiers pushed her back with the others. As rough hands grabbed Serena's arms, she felt a strange calm settle over her. The bond with Kale pulsed with his panic, his rage, his consuming need to reach her. But beneath all of that, she could feel something else. The twins stirring within her. And with them, a power she had never felt before. Her children were not just Kale's heirs. They were the product of a true mate bond, something that had not occurred in the royal bloodline for 7 generations. And those children, even unborn, carried magic of their own. Magic that was now awakening in response to the threat against their mother. Silver light began to emanate from Serena's belly, brighter than before, pulsing with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Raventhorn's eyes widened with sudden fear. "What is this?" The light spread, flowing through her limbs, filling her veins. But unlike the magic she had used in the marsh, this was different. Wilder, more primal. This was the power of the moon itself, channeled through the blood of unborn wolves. Pain exploded through Serena's body as bones began to shift. "No," she gasped, falling to her knees as the soldiers released her in terror. "Not now. Please, not now." But the transformation would not be denied. 4 months of suppressed change, held back by fear and her own resistance, demanded release. Her children's awakening power had triggered what she had been fighting since the night Kale first bit her. She was becoming a wolf, and she was doing it in the middle of an enemy stronghold, surrounded by soldiers who wanted her dead. The great hall doors exploded inward. Kale burst through in full wolf form, his black body hurtling toward her even as her own body tore itself apart. His howl shook the rafters, a sound of pure anguish and protective fury that made every wolf in the hall, ally and enemy alike, freeze in primal response. Raventhorn soldiers rushed to intercept him. Velaria screamed orders. Chaos erupted on every side. And Serena, caught in the agony of transformation, could only pray that she survived long enough to meet her mate on the other side. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Every bone in her body broke apart and reformed. Every muscle tore itself loose and rebuilt. Her skin rippled and split as fur, silver white as moonlight, pushed through from beneath. She screamed, but the sound that emerged was no longer human. Through the haze of agony, she was aware of Kale fighting his way toward her. His wolf form scattered Raventhorn soldiers like leaves before a storm, but he was not fast enough. Lord Raventhorn had drawn a blade, a sword that gleamed with an unnatural darkness. Cursed steel, she realized, the same blood magic they had used on Kale. "If I cannot have the throne," Raventhorn snarled, raising the blade over Serena's convulsing body, "then neither will he." The sword descended and stopped. Serena's hand, no longer fully human, had caught the blade. Silver-white fur covered her fingers, and claws that had not existed moments before dug into the cursed steel. The dark magic burned against her palm, but she held firm. "No," she growled, and her voice carried harmonics that resonated with primeval power. The transformation completed in a surge of silver light. Where a pregnant woman had knelt, a wolf now stood. Her fur was the color of moonlight on fresh snow, her eyes glowing with amber fire that matched Kale's own. She was smaller than his form, but no less magnificent, and she was furious. Serena lunged, her jaws closed around Raventhorn's sword arm with savage precision. The Lord screamed as bones crunched, the cursed blade clattering to the marble floor. She shook him once, twice, then flung him aside like a discarded puppet. Across the hall, Valeria shrieked with rage. "Kill her! Kill them both!" But the remaining Raventhorn soldiers were backing away in terror. They had signed on to support a coup, not to face two enraged wolves of the royal bloodline. One by one, they dropped their weapons and fled. Kale reached her side, his black fur pressing against her white. Through the bond, she felt his profound relief, his awe, his resolute pride. You shifted. His voice echoed in her mind, the mate bond carrying his thoughts directly to her. Serena, you shifted. I had motivation, she replied, surprised by how natural the mental communication felt. Kale's wolf made a sound that might have been a laugh. My brave, impossible mate. Valeria had retrieved her father's fallen sword and was advancing toward them with murder in her eyes. You ruined everything, Valeria hissed. You were supposed to be nothing, a scribe, a distraction. Instead, you have destroyed my family, stolen my crown, and now you stand there wearing a form you do not deserve. Serena shifted back to human, her body flowing through the change with surprising ease. She stood before her enemy, one hand resting on her belly where the twins still grew, miraculously unharmed by the transformation. I did not steal anything, Serena said quietly. The bond between Kale and me was forged by fate itself, not by ambition or blood magic. Your family tried to break it with curses and lies. All you accomplished was proving that true mates cannot be separated by the schemes of lesser wolves. Valeria screamed and charged. She never reached her target. Kale's jaws closed around her wrist, forcing her to drop the sword. He shifted back to human form, holding the struggling Valeria immobile while his wolves flooded the hall to secure the remaining Raventhorns. Valeria of House Raventhorn, Kale announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the great hall. You and your family are charged with treason, blood magic against the crown, and attempted murder of the true queen. You will face judgment before the assembled packs. You cannot do this, Valeria spat. You chose me. Before the entire realm, you chose me. I declared nothing. Kale's eyes burned gold with barely contained fury. A puppet controlled by blood magic is not a king making choices. The binding rite was a violation. It was always void. Guards brought cloaks to cover them both. Kale wrapped Serena in warm fabric with infinitely gentle hands, a stark contrast to the violence he had just unleashed. Are you hurt? He asked quietly, his eyes searching her face. Serena paused, taking inventory of her body. It felt different now. Stronger. More alive. The constant ache that had plagued her throughout her pregnancy was gone, replaced by a thrumming vitality she had never known. I am well. Better than well. Kyle's hand found her belly, and his eyes widened as he felt movement from two distinct places. The children, he breathed. They saved us, Serena said softly. Their power triggered the change. They protected all of us. Kale made a choked sound and pulled her into his arms. Through the bond, she felt the walls he had built around his heart finally giving way, felt the flood of emotion he had held back for 4 months of searching and suffering. I thought I had lost you, he whispered against her hair. When Raventhorn raised that sword, I know. Serena pulled back to cup his face in her hands. But I am here. I am not going anywhere. Not ever again. Kale's eyes searched her face, and she saw moisture gathering in them once more. The bond, he said hoarsely. It needs to be completed. Properly. If you will have me. Serena thought of everything they had been through. The secret meetings in the watchtower. The whispered promises in the archive stacks. The devastating betrayal that had not truly been a betrayal at all. The months of separation. The battle and the blood and the terrifying, glorious moment when she had embraced the wolf within. I will have you, she said. I have always been yours, Kyle. From the moment we met. He kissed her then, in front of the assembled wolves, and the defeated Raventhorns and the hostages who were weeping with relief. When they broke apart, Kale tilted his head, baring his throat to her in the gesture of a wolf offering himself completely to his mate. "Claim me," he said. "Make it complete." Serena understood instinctively what to do. Her wolf rose within her, guiding her movements as she pressed her lips to the spot where his neck met his shoulder. She felt his pulse thundering beneath her mouth. Her teeth sank into his flesh. The bond exploded between them. It was not pain. It was completion. Two halves of a single soul finally becoming whole. Serena felt Kale's essence pour into her as hers flowed into him. Every memory, every emotion, every secret corner of their hearts laid bare to each other. She saw the night of the binding rite through his eyes. Not the empty puppet she had witnessed from the gallery, but the horror of waking 3 days later with no memory of what he had done. She felt the urgency of his search, the way his wolf had howled in anguish every night, the slow descent toward madness as days turned to weeks, and weeks to months, with no sign of her. She felt his terror when he had seen Raventhorn raise that sword over her convulsing body, felt the way his heart had stopped in his chest, the way his wolf had screamed with primal fury, driving him forward with strength he did not know he possessed. Felt the crushing relief when her transformation had completed, and she had stood before him, magnificent and powerful and alive. She saw herself through his eyes, not a nameless scribe, but a woman of extraordinary courage and compassion. The scholar who had captivated a king with her quick wit and spirited heart. The mother of his children. His fated mate, chosen by destiny itself. The most precious soul in his entire existence. And he saw himself through hers. Not a king who had failed her, but a man who had fought against impossible odds to find her. Who had torn his kingdom apart rather than accept a false mate. Who loved her with a ferocity that transcended blood curses and political schemes, and even death itself. A man worthy of the love she had never stopped feeling, even in the darkest moments of her exile. When Serena finally released him, they were both overcome. "My queen," Kale breathed, pressing his forehead to hers. "My king," she answered. Around them, wolves began to howl, a celebration of victory, of justice, of a true mate bond, finally, completely, eternally sealed. In the weeks that followed, the Raventhorns faced judgment before the assembled packs of Valanthos. Lord Aldrich was executed for his crimes, his final moments spent in silence, too proud even then to beg for mercy he would never have received. Valeria was exiled to the frozen wastelands beyond the northern mountains, stripped of her name and her wolf, condemned to live out her days as the nothing she had once accused Serena of being. The kingdom healed slowly but surely. The crops that had withered under the weight of their alpha's suffering began to grow again. The wolves who had grown feral, driven mad by the broken bond between their king and his true mate, returned to their senses as the completed bond radiated peace and stability throughout the realm. The people of Valanthos celebrated their true queen with a joy that surprised Serena. She had expected suspicion, even hostility, from those who had witnessed the binding rite and believed her an interloper. Instead, she found acceptance. The wolves could feel the truth of the bond between her and Kale. They could sense that this was what fate had always intended. Hestia was given chambers in the royal wing, appointed as the official royal historian with orders to document everything that had transpired. She accepted with tears in her eyes and immediately began compiling what she called the true account of how a scribe became a queen. And on a warm summer evening, as the sun set over Valanthos in shades of gold and amber, Serena gave birth to twins. A boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's silver-touched magic, who shifted into wolf form within hours of his birth and had to be coaxed back to human by his exhausted but laughing parents. A girl with silver-white fur when she shifted and eyes that already gleamed with the amber fire of an alpha who gripped her father's finger with surprising strength and refused to let go. Kale held his children with tears welling in his eyes, his warrior's hands impossibly gentle as he cradled them against his chest. "Thank you," he whispered to Serena, who lay exhausted but radiant in their bed, watching her family with a joy so profound it almost hurt. "For fighting for us. For believing, even when I gave you every reason not to." Serena reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the claiming mark on his throat. The mark that matched the one on her wrist. Both now healed into beautiful silver scars that proclaimed their bond to all who saw them. "I never stopped believing," she said softly. "Even in the darkest moments, something inside me knew. We were always meant to find our way back to each other." Kale leaned down to kiss her, their children nestled safely between them, their wolves humming with contentment through the bond. "Always," he agreed, "in this life and every life that follows. You are my heart, Serena, my mate, my home." Outside their window, the wolves of Valanthos lifted their voices in a howl of celebration. And in the great tapestry of the kingdom's history, a new chapter was woven. The story of a scribe who became a queen, of an alpha king who tore every pack apart to find his true love, of a bond that could not be broken by blood magic or betrayal, or even the cruelest machinations of fate. They had found each other against all odds, and they would never be parted again. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story.